Hello, welcome back to my channel, guys. This is part 2 of a 2-part video that I am doing on my labor and delivery experience and my postpartum experience. So if you haven't checked out part 1, I will go ahead and link that here so that you can take a look at that. You don't have to watch part 1 to know what's going on in part 2. Part 1 is all about labor and delivery. Baby's crying, hang on. Okay, so like I said, you don't have to know what happened in part 1 to know what is going on in part 2. Part 1 is all about my labor and delivery experience, and now part 2 is going to be about my postpartum experience. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and get into it. I mentioned in my last video, we ended up staying in the hospital for only 24 hours after we had our baby, which was really great. I didn't want to stay in there for very long. And really the entire time we were at the hospital at that point was really great. I had mentioned this in my pregnancy updates, but one of the things toward the end of my pregnancy was that my blood pressure had started to rise and they had found protein in my urine. So they were concerned, my doctor was concerned about preeclampsia, but basically my blood pressure never got to the point where they say, yes, this is preeclampsia. So they just monitored me when I was in labor. They also monitored my blood pressure. It did go up pretty high at some points, but honestly, in labor, your blood pressure, if you're like perfectly fine, is gonna go up really high, so they weren't concerned. And then after I delivered her, anytime you're in the hospital postpartum, they're gonna be checking your blood pressure like consistently the whole time that you're there. And the entire time, as soon as I had her, my blood pressure was back down to completely normal. And I was like, awesome. I'm so happy. Like, it means that I am like good to go. That was just a pregnancy thing. I had her and now everything is fine and good to go. So I had all of those blood pressure things taken while I was in the hospital. Everything was fine. They were getting ready to release us, and they already had done all of the paperwork to let us go home. My doctor had said yes. The pediatrician had said yes. Like, everything was good to go. And it was late at night. It was probably like, I want to say like 6 p.m. So the nurse came in and said, okay, we're ready to discharge you. I'm just going to take your vitals one more time before you leave. And she took my blood pressure, and of course my blood pressure was high for the first time the entire time I was in the hospital. It was that, I think, like 134 or something over 94. So anything they say that's over 140 for the top number and over 90 or over 90 for the bottom number is cause for concern for preeclampsia. And I didn't even know this, but postpartum preeclampsia is a thing. And nobody really ever talks about that, but it's actually tends to be more dangerous than pregnancy preeclampsia, mainly because typically they don't catch it. Because unless you're taking your blood pressure at home yourself, you're not gonna know that you need to go to the hospital until you start having some other more severe symptoms. So it was a little bit alarming for me. I was like, oh crap, like here we go again. Now my blood pressure is high. It freaked me out a little bit. It freaked the nurse out a little bit too, and she said, okay, well, let's just take it again. Maybe you were just like nervous or something, or excited to go home. So I calmed myself down, took some deep breaths. She took it again, and it was exactly the same. So she said, okay, I'm gonna go call your doctor, and I'm just gonna go see what he suggests. Like, should we keep you or should we let you go home? So she came back probably like, I would say like 10, 15 minutes later, and said, I talked to my boss and she said, not a problem at all. We don't even like call the doctor unless the bottom number is over 100. And it's like consistently over 100. So no worries at all. Like, it was probably just a fluke. We're still gonna let you go home. They knew that we were really antsy to get home and see our daughter, our 2-year-old. So they were like, we're just gonna let you go home tonight. But I was still really worried. And I said, okay, well, tell me what symptoms I should be looking out for to know whether or not I need to call my doctor about this. And she said, okay, you should be looking out for dizziness, a really bad headache that doesn't go away, or pain in your upper right quadrant. Those are the big things that you should be looking out for. Or if your blood pressure at home is over 140 over 90. I had already had a blood pressure cuff at home because I was monitoring my blood pressure since it was high while I was pregnant. So I was like, okay, cool, I will look out for those symptoms. We came home. Actually, my daughter was asleep by then, so we just like saw my mom, introduced my mom to Emma, and then had my mom go home, and then we went to bed. And probably about, I want to say 11 p.m., we woke up because Emma was hungry, so I needed to feed her. And I said, actually, I think I got up. I got up out of bed after I was done feeding her on one side to change her diaper, and I felt dizzy. And I was like, oh crap. So I grabbed my blood pressure cuff. I took my blood pressure, and at that point it was 147 over 97, something like that. I can't really remember the numbers that well now since it's been so long, but it was high. It was over 140 over 90 for both numbers. So I called my doctor. I clearly woke him up, and I said, hey, I was discharged. This is what the nurse said. You know, if I notice any of these things, to call you. I'm dizzy, and my blood pressure is 147 over 97. And he said, okay, don't worry about it for now. Go to sleep, get some rest. It's really important that you get some rest because that will help. If it gets over 160 over 110, call me back. So I said, okay, I'll do that. So I went back to sleep. I was, again, really nervous about it. I had done some research on postpartum preeclampsia, and it's scary because if you don't catch it in time, it causes seizures, it can cause stroke, and I was nervous that I was going to go to sleep and I wasn't going to wake up. So I tried to go back to sleep. A few hours later, Emma woke up again to feed, and I decided after I fed her that I was going to check my blood pressure again. Checked it again, and this time it was 153 over 107. So it was really high. It wasn't yet at 160 over 110, but it was obviously approaching that. And so I decided, okay, I'm gonna wait until the morning. I'm gonna wait until about 6 a.m. and then I'm gonna call my doctor. I'm gonna tell him that it's 153 over 107, and he's for sure gonna want me to come into the office because, like, what's the point in waiting another, however many hours for it to get over 160 over 110? It's obviously going in that direction. So I got up, I changed my clothes, I got ready, and I told my husband at probably 5 o'clock, I said, hey, this is what my blood pressure was. I'm gonna call the doctor at 6 o'clock, and I'm sure he's gonna want me to come in. So I'm just letting you know, we'll have to drive over there. I called my doctor at 6 o'clock. I think I woke him up again. And this time I said, hey, I just took my blood pressure again. It's 153 over 107. And before I could even finish the sentence, he said, I really think you're just working yourself up. You need to calm down. You need to go to sleep. Everything is fine. It's not an issue until it's over 160 over 110. Call me if anything changes, goodbye. And it was shocking. I had never, first of all, I've always loved my OB. I've said that in past videos. I just have always thought he was fantastic. We've had great rapport. I've also never had a doctor speak to me in that way and just completely kind of disregard concerns that I had about my own body. So I got off that call and I was really confused. I told my husband, this is what just happened, and I don't know what to do. I started crying, and I was like, I'm just really scared. I'm really scared that if I fall back asleep, I'm not gonna wake up again. So he was like, well, let's just keep monitoring your blood pressure today, and if we need to, we can call him back and just tell him we need to do something about this. So the day went on, my blood pressure stayed really high. The highest that it got, I think, was 159 over 107. So it was really, really high. And all day I was just I really don't feel right. Like, I am really scared. I am not feeling like I should be feeling right now. Like, I'm really nervous. But I had this, like, I didn't want to call my doctor because I didn't want to feel stupid. And I didn't want him to tell me, like, you're just imagining these things, like, whatever. So what I ended up doing was calling the hospital. I called the hospital. I called, like, the nurse's desk. And the first nurse who answered the phone, I think her name was Josie, I told her what was happening, and I said, I just need your opinion on something. I was discharged yesterday. These are the symptoms that I've been having. This is what my doctor told me, and I'm just really scared and I don't know what to do. And her response was, you need to advocate for yourself. You need to call your doctor back and you need to tell him, these are the concerns that I have. Do you want me to come to your office or do you want me to go back to the hospital? And don't give him the option. And then she told me, you know, take your blood pressure again for the next hour or so every 30 minutes and record what it is and then call him. So I again cried on the phone to her, and I was just like, thank you. You're the first person who's actually taken me seriously, and decided that that was what I was going to do. So I got off that call and I was feeling really good about things. And then about 5 minutes later, I got a phone call myself and I answered it, and it was the head nurse. It was Josie's boss. And Josie's boss had called to tell me that nurses are not allowed to give medical advice over the phone, and she apologizes that Josie did that. It was out of line, and that I'm in the care of my doctor, so if my doctor told me that everything was going to be fine, then everything's going to be fine, and I need to listen to him. And so again, I got off that call really confused, really overwhelmed with emotion, and really scared, because I'm like, okay, well, these nurses are concerned for me. My doctor's not. Now this other woman is telling me, don't listen to the nurses. So it was just a lot of emotion that whole day. I went throughout the rest of the day. My in-laws came over to meet the baby, and we put my daughter to sleep at around 7. And as I was putting her to sleep, I felt something pass out of me. And I knew immediately that it was a really large blood clot. I could just tell. It felt very similar to when I had miscarried before I was pregnant with Emma, when I had actually expelled the pregnancy. It felt the same. So I knew what it was immediately. I went into the bathroom, and it was a blood clot that was probably a little bit bigger than a golf ball. And one of the things they say when they're discharging you is, if you have any blood clots that you pass that are as big or bigger than a golf ball, you need to call your doctor. So I was terrified. I had all of this other stuff going on. Now I was passing this huge blood clot, and I just completely broke down. I called for my husband downstairs. I asked him to come up. I was sobbing, just saying, I don't know what's going to happen. I feel like I'm not okay, and I don't want to not be here for my kids. So I don't know what to do. And he said, okay, do you want me to call the doctor? And I was like, yes, please call for me. So he called. My doctor was actually not on that day for that weekend. So it was his on-call doctor. So my husband left a voicemail for him with their answering service. He came back in and said, okay, I just left a voicemail for the on-call doctor. And literally within minutes, that doctor had called me. My husband had left in the message what my symptoms were. And so the doctor called me immediately and said, okay, tell me what's going on. I told him about the blood clot, and I told him about the high blood pressure. He was like, the blood clot's fine as long as it's not multiple blood clots that size. I'm not worried about that. I am really worried about your blood pressure. So I'm going to prescribe you a blood pressure medication right now. I need you to go pick it up right now. And it was 8 o'clock at night. I need you to take it, and then 2 hours after you take it, you need to take your blood pressure. And if it's over 145, over 95, you need to call me back. So I finally felt kind of vindicated that like, okay, this is really serious, and finally a doctor was taking me seriously and telling me like, this is a really big deal. You should feel like you need to call a doctor. So we got the prescription. I took my blood pressure 2 hours later, and it was 147 or something like that over 103 or something. So I called him back, and he said, okay, you need to go back to the hospital. So I will see you at the hospital. So I had to call my in-laws to come back and stay the night that night. And we went back to the hospital at about 3 in the morning. Me, my husband, and my newborn, since she was nursing and I was gonna have to nurse her in the hospital. So we went back there, and we were in the hospital that entire next day, just trying to figure out how to lower my blood pressure. I had been prescribed I can't remember what it's called. I'll leave it in the description box below. But I was prescribed one. It wasn't working very well, so they also put me on another one called labetalol in the hospital. And finally, by the time we got my blood pressure back, like in a somewhat normal range, I was told I would have to do the it's not naproxone. It's something like that. It starts with an N. I'd have to do that once a day and take the labetalol 3 times a day, and then call my doctor and schedule an appointment to see him within the next few days. So did that. We were finally discharged that night. It was really hard because my poor 2-year-old was at home, thought that we were home, and then woke up on Saturday morning and we weren't there. So it was really a rough day for her. It was really rough for me because I was just so scared and like really wanted to be home with her and just wanted to be healthy and back to normal. But we were discharged, and I was, on that medication and was told I was on like complete bed rest for at least the next 10 days. So I couldn't really do anything except for nurse and sleep, and that was it. So I begrudgingly ended up having to call my doctor, my regular doctor, on Monday to schedule an appointment to come see him and basically talk through like what next steps were going to be on all of these medications and everything, which I did. And my husband told me, you need to have a really uncomfortable conversation with him because you need to tell him that like the way that he treated you was not okay and that he needed to take you more seriously, and like that whether or not you decide to continue seeing him as your doctor, like you need to have this conversation and make sure that you're heard. So I went to that appointment. We had our normal appointment. We went through everything, and at the end, he said, "Is there anything else?" And I said, "Yeah, I want to talk about like the phone conversations that we had and everything." And I'm really proud of myself, but I had a really tough conversation with him. And I told him that he made me feel like I was silly for being concerned, and that obviously I'm in a fragile state right now being postpartum anyway. And I really just needed somebody to listen and take me seriously. And he actually took it really well. And he told me, he apologized. He said, "I can understand why you would feel all of those things. I'm really sorry that I handled the conversation that way." He said that typically he doesn't prescribe anyone anything until they are over 160, over 110. And that's just kind of how he was taught through his education. But he knows that other doctors do things differently, so totally understood my concerns. So yeah, it was a really good conversation at the end, and he's still my doctor. I actually still, am gonna want to keep going to him at least for the time being, and I'm really proud of myself for having that conversation and advocating for myself. So that was really kind of the focus of the first week and a half of postpartum for me, was just trying to stay healthy. I had to cut out salt from my diet completely. I had to be on bed rest with a toddler who was trying to, get acclimated to the fact that she now has a sister that I was, nursing and holding all the time. But we got through it, and slowly but surely my blood pressure has started to come down on its own. I'm not on any medication anymore, which is really awesome. I haven't been on it for about a week or so. My blood pressure is still not back to normal, but it's in a fine range. It's in a non-dangerous range. So I'm feeling really good about that. I've finally been able to start doing stuff. I've been like cleaning around the house and being more active with my toddler and all of that. So yeah, we are on the up and up, and everything's looking good so far. Really the biggest reason that I wanted to share this postpartum experience is because postpartum preeclampsia is like not really talked about, and it's not mentioned a lot by doctors. I had no idea that it was a thing. I think most women don't have any idea, and it can be incredibly dangerous because, like I said, you can get postpartum preeclampsia whether you had preeclampsia or not during your pregnancy. Any woman can get it, and most of the time you don't catch it until you're having other really scary symptoms, like those headaches that won't go away. Having a headache like that is an indication that you're going down the path of having a seizure very soon. So it's really, really important to get medical attention immediately if you're having a headache like that. But the crazy thing is that most of the symptoms that you get besides the blood pressure are symptoms that you typically just chalk up to postpartum. Like, you know, I have a headache because I'm just really tired and sleep deprived, or I'm dizzy because I'm tired and sleep deprived, or I haven't eaten enough, or you know, I'm having pain in my abdomen because I just had a baby and like pushed a baby out of my midsection. So all of those things, a lot of women just chalk up to being postpartum, and you shouldn't. You should not ignore those. I am going to do a whole postpartum essentials video, all of the things that I think are needs, like essential needs that you should have postpartum, and one of them is a blood pressure cuff, because I'm now a huge advocate that whether you had any experience with preeclampsia or not during your pregnancy, you should get yourself a blood pressure cuff, and you should be taking your blood pressure yourself at home for the first like 6 weeks postpartum, just so that if you do have high blood pressure, you can catch it early and you can go in and get on medication, and you can literally, quite literally, save your own life. So I think it's really important, and I'm just hoping that this video can shed some light for other women out there who have had scares with this, or who don't even know that this is a thing and that they need to be looking out for it. And hopefully if I can help save one person from going through what I went through, then it'll all be worth it. So yeah, that is my part 2 of my labor and delivery and postpartum experience. It's been quite a whirlwind, to say the least, but we're all good now. Breastfeeding has been going fantastic. I'll probably do a little bit more information on that and an update on my newest daughter, Emma, in a 1-month update video on her. So she's going to be a month old next week, so I'm going to be doing a fun video there. And yeah, that is pretty much it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and the last one. I hope you got yourselves a glass of wine as well. I know I am enjoying the fact that I can now partake in some alcoholic beverages. So cheers, cheers everyone, to all of us who can drink alcohol. And for all of you pregnant women out there, it'll be you too soon enough. Don't even worry about it. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to my channel. I do lots of mommy content and fun videos like that. Hit the bell notification so you know when my next video is up, and click the thumbs up button if you like this one as well. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.
You know that I'ma keep it cool. With you I feel like breaking rules. On the edge, looking out with no parachute. You know I'm dreaming about us too, playing around without a clue. On the edge, leaning out. With us it's all or nothing.